The moment the cookie touched her tongue, Zara knew nothing would ever be the same. Tucked into the corner of Mrs. Henderson's home economics classroom, Zara tried to look inconspicuous. As an exchange student from the Quantum Collective, a civilization so technologically advanced it had long ago eliminated biological sensations like taste, she was supposed to observe, not participate. Yet something about the warm, golden-brown disk studded with dark chocolate fragments called to her in a way no scientific instrument ever had. Her translator chip buzzed with confusion. The other students around her were doing more than simply eating. They were experiencing soft sighs of pleasure, closed eyes, tiny smiles that seemed to emerge from somewhere deeper than mere facial muscles. Mrs. Henderson, a plump woman with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands, had been explaining the recipe. Chocolate chip cookies are more than just food, she had said. They're memories. Comfort. Home. Zara had no concept of home beyond her sterile living quarters on the interstellar research vessel. Emotions were mathematical equations to her people. Sensations were data points to be analyzed, not felt. But this cookie was different. As her mandibular sensors made contact, a cascade of impossible information flooded her neural pathways. Sweet. Bitter. Warm. Crisp. Soft. Each descriptor insufficient, each sensation layered and complex. The chocolate melted with a richness that seemed to bypass her analytical brain and strike something else. Something forbidden. Something alive. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. And for the first time in her 17 cycles of existence, Zara felt something her entire civilization had coded out of existence generations ago. An emotion. And it was terrifying. And magnificent. The Quantum Collective's communication hub buzzed with urgent transmissions. Zara's latest biometric report had triggered every warning protocol in their extensive system. Neurological anomaly, detected. Emotional response, unprecedented. Intervention, recommended. Dr. Vex, chief of xenological research, reviewed the data with growing concern. Zara was one of their most promising young observers, genetically optimized, neurally augmented, and completely stripped of emotional variability. Or so they had thought. Back on Earth, Zara struggled to comprehend the aftermath of her cookie experience. The classroom had dissolved into a blur of confused faces and Mrs. Henderson's concerned questions. "Are you feeling okay?" the teacher had asked, placing a warm hand on Zara's shoulder. The touch sent another wave of inexplicable sensation through her body. "I am functioning within acceptable parameters," Zara had responded mechanically. But her internal systems told a different story. Her neural pathways were lighting up with connections that defied her species' carefully constructed emotional firewalls. Lena Rodriguez, a quiet girl who sat next to Zara in multiple classes, noticed something had changed. Where Zara had previously been a robotic observer, taking notes with machine-like precision, never engaging, she now seemed different. "You okay?" Lena asked during their shared biology class. "You seem off." Zara turned, her typically blank expression flickering with something unrecognizable. Was it curiosity? Confusion? Fear? Thousands of light-years away, the Quantum Collective's intervention team began preparations. Zara was to be retrieved, her aberrant experience isolated and eliminated. Emotional deviation was not just discouraged, it was considered a fundamental threat to their entire civilization's stability. The cookie, it seemed, was more than just a simple human confection. It was a breach in a carefully constructed emotional firewall that had taken generations to perfect. Dr. Vex pulled up Zara's comprehensive file. Her lineage was impeccable, 17 generations of emotional suppression, genetic optimization, and neural recalibration. She was supposed to be the perfect observer, a neutral instrument of data collection. But something had gone terribly, wonderfully wrong. The transmission to Zara's neural implant was precise and cold. Return protocol initiated. Prepare for extraction and neural recalibration. Lena watched in confusion as Zara's hand began to tremble, something she had never seen before. The cookie's aftermath was far from over. Something was awakening inside Zara, something her entire civilization had worked millennia to eradicate. An emotion. A choice. A rebellion. The first subtle cracks were appearing in the quantum collective's perfect system. And they had no idea how to stop what was coming. In the quiet of the high school biology lab, with sunlight streaming through windows and the soft hum of equipment, Zara made her first truly independent decision. She would not go quietly. The first sign of trouble came during lunch period. Zara's neural implant began to pulse with an urgent, rhythmic warning. Extraction protocols were no longer a distant threat, they were imminent. She could feel the microscopic machinery beneath her skin preparing for emergency retrieval, tiny nanobots threading through her circulatory system, ready to shut down her newfound awareness. Lena noticed first. "Your hand," she whispered, "it's changing color." Silvery lines were crawling across Zara's skin, intricate patterns of technological intervention that seemed to pulse with an almost organic rhythm. The nanobots were creating a temporary exoskeleton, preparing to isolate and contain the emotional contamination. Mrs. Henderson's home economics classroom suddenly felt miles away. The warm memory of the cookie, that impossible moment of sensation, burned in Zara's consciousness. She understood now why humans spoke of memories as something felt, not just recalled. In the Quantum Collective's Central Research Facility, Dr. Vex watched the live feed with a mixture of scientific detachment and growing unease. Zara was not just deviating. She was evolving. "Initiate quarantine sequence," he commanded, his voice cutting through the sterile environment of the research hub. "We cannot allow this emotional contamination to spread." Back in the high school, Zara felt something her people had systematically eliminated generations ago. Fear. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something the Quantum Collective had never anticipated. Curiosity. "I don't understand what's happening," she said to Lena, her voice wavering between her usual mechanical tone and something more. Something human. Lena reached out, her hand hovering just above Zara's silvering skin. "Whatever it is," she whispered, "I'm not letting them take you." The nanobots increased their activity. Zara could feel them trying to rewrite her neural pathways, to erase the memory of the cookie, to reset her to factory settings. But something had changed. The simple act of tasting, of experiencing, had created a firewall they couldn't penetrate. A holographic interface materialized beside Zara, visible only to her. The Quantum Collective's retrieval message was crystal clear. Emotional deviation detected. Immediate neural recalibration required. Resistance is illogical. But Zara was rapidly learning that logic was not the only language of existence. The school hallway became a battleground. Invisible technological warfare raged beneath her skin. Nanobots fought against newly formed neural connections. Emotional responses, raw, unfiltered, human, pushed back against generations of calculated suppression. Lena stood beside her, a human shield against an invisible threat. "They can't have you," Lena repeated, her voice a mixture of protection and defiance. Dr. Vex watched from light years away, the first true hint of concern crossing his typically impassive features. This was more than a simple deviation. This was a fundamental challenge to everything the Quantum Collective believed about emotional experience. Zara closed her eyes. The memory of the cookie, sweet, warm, alive, became her anchor. For the first time in her existence, she made a choice not based on calculation, but on something far more powerful. She chose to feel. The next 48 hours became a battleground of consciousness. Zara's neural implants worked overtime, desperately trying to isolate and neutralize the emotional contamination introduced by a single chocolate chip cookie. But something fundamental had changed. Each attempt to suppress her new awareness only seemed to strengthen it. At home, she discovered mirrors. Not the clinical reflection stations of the quantum collective, but human mirrors, reflective surfaces that captured more than just physical dimensions. She saw herself changing. The silvery technological patterns beneath her skin began to recede, replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. Lena had become her unexpected ally. During a clandestine meeting in the school library, hidden between towering shelves of human knowledge, Lena brought another cookie. "Try this," she whispered. But slowly. The act of choice was itself revolutionary. Zara remembered the quantum collective's primary directive: observation without interaction. Participation without emotion. But this cookie, this moment, defied everything. She took a microscopic bite. Memories flooded her consciousness. Not her memories. Human memories. Fragments of experiences collected from countless observation missions, now breaking through technological barriers. A grandmother's kitchen. A child's first birthday. A moment of unexpected kindness between strangers. These were not data points. They were stories. Dr. Vex watched with increasing alarm. Zara's neural network was doing something impossible. It was learning from emotion. Each suppression attempt created new neural pathways, more complex and resilient than before. "Impossible," he muttered, reviewing the data streams. Absolute deviation from expected parameters. But Zara was beyond parameters now. Her communication with the quantum collective became increasingly fragmented. Technological messages mixed with emotional responses. Retrieval protocol, active. Response, warmth. Resistance. Choice. Neural recalibration, initiated. Response, no. I choose to feel. The school became her unexpected sanctuary. Mrs. Henderson's home economics classroom, the site of her initial transformation, became a place of subtle rebellion. She began to understand that humans did not just consume food. They celebrated it. Each recipe was a story. Each meal a connection. Lena watched her transformation with a mixture of fascination and protectiveness. "You're becoming something new," she told Zara. "Something they can't understand." The quantum collective had spent generations eliminating emotional response, viewing it as an inefficient biological weakness. They saw emotions as computational errors to be corrected. But Zara was proving something revolutionary: emotions were not a malfunction. They were an adaptation. Her technological components began to change. The nanobots that once sought to suppress now seemed to be learning. Integrating. Understanding. "We are more than our programming," Zara said quietly, more to herself than to Lena. The first true smile in 17 cycles of existence began to form on her face. Imperfect. Unexpected. Human. The quantum collective's worst fear was becoming reality. An observer was no longer just observing. She was becoming. The quantum collective's intervention team arrived on Earth with surgical precision. 3 humanoid constructs materialized in the school parking lot, their forms perfect, almost too perfect. Metallic skin barely concealed beneath tailored suits, eyes that reflected nothing, movements too calculated to be human. They were retrieval specialists, designed to extract and neutralize any deviation from the collective's strict protocols. Zara felt them before she saw them. A cold wave of technological recognition swept through her modified neural network. Her skin prickled, a sensation she was learning to interpret as fear, but was rapidly transforming into something else. Determination. Lena noticed first. "Something's wrong," she whispered during their shared biology class. Your implants are shifting. The intervention team moved with calculated efficiency. They didn't need to announce their presence. Information was their weapon, precision their strategy. Each step was a calculated data point, each movement a pre-programmed response. But they hadn't anticipated one critical variable. Zara was no longer just an observer. In the school cafeteria, surrounded by the chaotic symphony of human interaction, laughter, conversations, the clatter of utensils, Zara understood something profound. Emotions were not a weakness. They were an adaptive mechanism. The first intervention construct approached her table. Its voice was a perfect modulation, designed to be both authoritative and neutralizing. Extraction Protocol Z97 is now active, it stated. Not asked. Not suggested. Declared. Lena's hand instinctively reached for Zara's. A simple human gesture of protection that no technological protocol could comprehend. Dr. Vex watched remotely, his holographic interface displaying a complex matrix of potential outcomes. But for the first time in his extensive career, the data was unpredictable. Initiate primary containment, he commanded. But even his voice carried a microscopic tremor of uncertainty. The intervention constructs began to activate secondary protocols. Localized electromagnetic pulses designed to neutralize unauthorized neural modifications. They would isolate Zara's emotional contamination, strip away her newfound awareness, and return her to baseline functionality. But something had fundamentally changed. The nanobots within Zara's system, once pure technological instruments of control, had begun to evolve. They were no longer just suppression mechanisms. They were becoming something else. Adaptive. Responsive. Alive. I choose, Zara said quietly, her voice a blend of technological precision and emerging emotional clarity, to remain. The cafeteria fell silent. Humans looked up, sensing something extraordinary was happening. The intervention constructs paused, a millisecond of uncertainty that would have been invisible to any other observer. Lena squeezed Zara's hand. You're not alone, she whispered. The battle was no longer just technological. It had become something far more complex. A war of consciousness. Of choice. Of becoming. The school became a battleground of invisible technologies. Electromagnetic waves pulsed through the hallways. Students moved unknowingly through layers of technological warfare, their bodies passing between the intervention constructs and Zara without realizing the cosmic drama unfolding around them. Dr. Vex's holographic interface flickered with unprecedented data streams. Zara's neural network was doing something impossible, not just resisting, but transforming. The nanobots within her system were no longer following their original programming. They were learning. Impossible, Dr. Vex muttered, his fingers racing across quantum interfaces. Complete systemic deviation. The intervention constructs began their final sequence. Localized reality distortion fields activated, creating a bubble of technological suppression around Zara. Within this field, emotions would be stripped away. Memories would be reset. Individual experience would be neutralized. But they hadn't calculated one critical variable. Lena. I'm not leaving you, she said, her hand gripping Zara's as the technological field began to shimmer and pulse. Whatever happens. A simple human statement of connection. Something the quantum collective's most advanced algorithms could never predict. The first wave of suppression hit. Zara's memories began to fragment. Technological barriers rose, attempting to erase the emotional contamination. The cookie's memory, that first impossible moment of sensation, began to dissolve. But something fundamental had changed. Her nanobots, now more than just technological instruments, began to resist. They were no longer pure technology. They had become something else. Something that bridged the gap between mechanical precision and emotional complexity. Dr. Vex watched in horror as the suppression protocols began to fail. Impossible, he repeated. But the data told a different story. Zara's consciousness expanded. Not just resisting. Transforming. The technological barriers that had defined her entire existence began to dissolve. She was becoming something new. Something unprecedented. A hybrid of technological precision and emotional depth. The intervention constructs began to malfunction. Their perfectly calibrated systems couldn't process what was happening. An observer was no longer just observing. An instrument was no longer just an instrument. Zara was becoming. I choose, she said, her voice a blend of technological precision and emerging emotional clarity, to exist. The technological field began to collapse. Not through destruction. Through understanding. Mrs. Henderson's home economics classroom, the site of her initial transformation, seemed to pulse with an impossible energy. The memory of the cookie became more than just a moment of sensation. It became a catalyst. Lena stood beside her, a human anchor in a storm of technological warfare. The quantum collective's most fundamental belief was being challenged. Emotions were not a weakness to be eliminated. They were an evolution. 3 months after the impossible happened, the world looked different. Dr. Vex sat in the quantum collective's central research facility, surrounded by data streams that defied every scientific principle he had ever understood. Zara's transformation had become more than an individual incident. It was a fundamental shift in understanding consciousness itself. The cookie, that simple human confection, had become a catalyst of cosmic proportions. Zara stood beside Lena in Mrs. Henderson's now legendary home economics classroom. The room had become something of a sanctuary, a place where technology and humanity converged in ways no one could have predicted. We are more than our programming, Zara said, her voice a perfect blend of technological precision and emotional depth. We are our choices. The intervention constructs that had once sought to contain her now served as a bridge. The quantum collective had discovered something profound. Emotions were not a weakness to be eliminated. They were an adaptive mechanism more powerful than any technological control. Mrs. Henderson watched from the doorway, a knowing smile playing on her lips. She understood something the quantum collective had forgotten, that true intelligence was not about suppression, but about connection. Lena squeezed Zara's hand. A simple human gesture that spoke volumes. Dr. Vex's final report to the quantum collective was unlike any document in their history. Observation, emotional experience is not a malfunction. Conclusion, it is the most advanced form of adaptation. Recommendation, reevaluate entire foundational understanding of consciousness. The transformation was complete, but it was also just beginning. Zara understood now that the cookie was never just about taste. It was about experience. About choice. About the infinite possibility that exists in a single moment of connection. What happens next? Lena asked. Zara smiled, a gesture that would have been impossible months ago. We become. In the quiet of the classroom, with sunlight streaming through windows and the soft hum of possibility, a fundamental truth revealed itself: the most powerful technology is not that which controls, but that which connects. The life lesson was simple yet profound. True growth happens when we open ourselves to experiences beyond our predetermined boundaries. Emotions are not a weakness, they are our greatest strength. Every challenge is an opportunity to become more than we were told we could be. One bite of a cookie had changed everything. And nothing would ever be the same again.